fishing boat came along and dropped his big long fishing line.
That's not looking good, is it?
So it's just drifted straight onto us.
That big storm that you saw earlier came right in just as we were hauling out.
Hope you like my new hat. FOLLOWTHEBOAT Esper hats, just arrived straight from the UK and I love it, it's brilliant. Anyway, we are, look at us, we're out, we're on the ocean. We're motor sailing, sadly, not sailing because we've only got 5 knots, it's just on the front there, and we've got a bit of a current against us, what with it being a spring tide and all. Anyway, we have just left Admiral Marina at Pangkor, and that was quite interesting because we were tucked right up in a corner with a catamaran on one side and very little room to manoeuvre, so we got the guys to help us, and they helped us just swing Esper out and reverse out because she doesn't like going backwards. She's built to go forwards. We've got no bow thruster and she's very heavy, so a little bit of a springing off and then towing out for a little bit, but we came out fine and here we are now. We're heading to Pangkor, as I say. We're going to be doing a haul out because we need to be have the boat surveyed there because the insurance company have said it's been 10 years, she needs another insure, she needs another inspection, and also we're looking at possibly getting new rigging. So we'll be there in a few days. We're going to take our time, not going to do any overnighters unless we feel like it. We've got a shipping channel on one side, land on the other, but at the moment it's all looking good.
I was just minding my own business in the cockpit. Liz went down for something to, for a little lie down, and I checked the speed and we were doing 8 knots over ground, and that was motor sailing. We put the staysail out just to give it a bit of stability. So, well, turn the engine off and go for a little sail. Obviously we've still got some tide with us because the wind's only about 8 knots, so it's not particularly strong. As you see, the sea is completely flat calm. But just give us a nice opportunity on our first day back on the water to actually get some sailing in. Got a little bit of an issue with the staysail. I think I mentioned this before. There is a couple of kinks in it because we've had to drop it slightly. We've got an issue with the halyard wrapping at the top, and the way around that is to let it off a bit, and as a consequence that drops down. So I can tighten it up whilst it's out, but I have to drop it again in order to furl it away. But that's an insignificant minor issue when you consider that this is my first sail in a couple of months, I think, so always good. So we've been sailing for about an hour now and we are consistently hitting 8 knots. In fact, we're doing 8.5 knots sometimes in only 11 knots of wind. Now, admittedly, we're on a spring tide, so we've got quite a bit of current that's helping us. All around us are boats at anchor. They're all pointing that way, so they're pointing into the tide. But even with 11 knots of wind, I wouldn't have expected to be doing 8 knots. And I think this has a lot to do with our new head sail. Quite a few of you have been asking how the new sails are holding up. Well, aside from the horizontal crinkles that I was talking about earlier, which is due to the furling, the old furling system that we have, the sails are holding up very well. So 8+ knots in 11 knots of wind, even with a bit of current, that's pretty good going. So very happy.
it turned out to be a pretty good day. We got, I think at one stage we actually hit 9 knots in 10 knots of wind, which sounds pretty amazing, except that we did actually have 3.5 knots of current pushing us along as well. But it was great, and we did a load of sailing, and we only just put the main down at the very end. And we are now in Port Klang, which is the huge commercial port that services KL, capital of Malaysia. And we've got a nice little spot here. On the one side you've got all this commercial stuff going on, docks and everything all over there, and on the other side it's just mangroves. Just us here in this spot. So, bring on the sailing in 2018. Cheers. So we're saying goodbye to Klang. We had an extremely good night's sleep. It did rain, but it's a very, very quiet anchorage, so a really good spot. We'll remember that when we come back down this way. We're now heading north towards Pangkor. We probably won't do it all in one day. We're going to find somewhere just to drop the hook later on. Another murky morning, not a breath of air, nothing at all. The tide is just turning, so we should get the current to help us get out of here. It's about 15 miles to get through the channel and out the other end, and then we'll be back in the Malacca Straits, off to the next spot. Let's pray for a bit of wind.
Well, we've anchored and it's all a bit strange actually. We're kind of out in the middle of the sea. I say out in the middle of the sea, I exaggerate, but we've got land which is a good, I think the closest bit of land is about 4 miles away, and typically around here it's all very shallow for quite a long way out. So we are literally sitting in 7 meters, 3-4 miles off the shore. And although the prevailing wind is coming from the west, we have quite a lot of strong currents, so it's quite difficult to work out which way we should anchor. And I think the tide is mid-tide anyway. We seem to be okay. And Liz is now putting out the snubber. But what is very strange, which isn't on the charts, is this platform over there about a mile away, just seemingly sitting in the middle of the sea, and we don't know what it's for. It's got a few stakes around it, but it's a 2-story platform on stilts out at sea with a series of steps leading down to the seabed, to the sea itself. Don't know what that's about at all. Very strange. There's a fishing port just over there, so we've got a lot of the fishing boats that we've been passing this afternoon have been going into that fishing port up through this very, very shallow channel here. Can you explain what's happened?
Fishing boat came along and dropped his big long fishing line over there, and he just left, and it doesn't seem to be attached to anything, so it's just drifted straight onto us. Here it is, that's the end of it there, and we're trying to pull this up, put it around the front of the boat. It's coming along all right. But it's the first time that's happened in 11 years, never seen anything like it. It's absolutely being carried by the tide, which is fine. But I don't understand why he put it in front of us. It's just mad, just crazy. Anyway, you managed to flip it over at the end there, and it's now soaring off behind us.
He's lost his lights?
Yeah, his lights, well, most of his little blinking lights came off of his float. I think they're on a line because they seem to be going with it. They're either with it or they're just drifting in the tide. It's a very strong current here. So I'm glad it happened now, not at night. So this is the third day of our very slow trip north from Port Dickson to Pangkor. It's quite cloudy, as you can see. It's not a terrific amount of wind, but who knows, things might change. It's not so far today. We've only got to do about 35 miles, something like that. And we're going to anchor at Pangkor Island. But before we do that, we're going to pass this object that we showed you yesterday that is just sitting in the sea and doesn't appear to have any specific use. So if we get a bit closer, we might be able to work out what it is. Well, that apparently is a Paradise Resort hotel featuring water sports. It didn't look particularly paradisical, if there is such a word. But what it is very good at attracting fishermen. So all around it are small fishing boats with their nets everywhere, which is always a joy.
An early start. We are at Pangkor now and we are getting ready to haul out. So high water's at 7:30. The guys are just getting the haul out facility ready, and there's a ferry coming in at 7:30 as well, so I don't know if we're going to wait for him or what. It creates a bit of a wash. That's not looking good, is it? Well, unfortunately you missed the haul out because that big storm that you saw earlier came right in just as we were hauling out. Anyway, it's all pretty straightforward really. Just took a second run at it, and you know, there's two guys on either side who are telling you to move left, move right, move forward, and this is the haul out. So it's a hydraulic inflatable system. So you drive into it and it's got big rubber cushions that they inflate. And then the hydraulics actually lift the boat up from the back and keep it level. So you can see she's nice and level now as he's doing a bit of a quick spray on the underside. It's now time to go and inspect the hull and to see what condition some of that osmosis is in. So there's Esper behind. Can't really tell, looking at the hull, whether there's osmosis or not yet. It's still very wet, so probably have to wait until she's up on the hard here. And this is going to be our home for the first, well, we say week, we actually don't know how long we're going to be here. It was supposed to be a few days. It's turning possibly into a bigger haul out than we expected. More on that later. Anyway, we are literally right by the slip, so they're just going to bring the boat over, and we're going to be next door to a lovely Super Maramoo and Admiral. And it looks like we could have quite a nice view. So they are now just backing us in, little U-turn by the driver, backing us into our place now, much to Millie's amusement. She's not really sure what's going on. So you can see behind me one of the guys was knocking on the hull, and that's because he's putting the struts where the bulkheads are. So he's trying to find the bulkheads by finding a solid sound as he knocks around the hull, and that's where the struts go.
So here we are all ready for our insurance survey, which is about to start the next day, and we will tell you all about that in the next episode. In the meantime, Jamie, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that lift out?
Yeah, apologies for not being able to record that, but just at that moment you saw that huge squall came in, and it played a bit of havoc actually getting onto that cradle. It is a really straightforward procedure, and I have to say double thumbs up to Pangkor Marina, the staff at Pangkor Marina, very professional. But of course we had that wind coming in from the hind quarter, so it did play a bit of havoc as we tried to line up. I didn't have my glasses on, so I was struggling to see the man at the back sort of waving, giving us directions.
Yeah, I went at the front and he was doing those sort of aeroplane movements, going forward, going on, and then I was trying to relay them to you.
I know, and I just couldn't see anything. It was just slashing with rain. But anyway, very straightforward and good system, really good haul-out system.
Do you know, I think it's my favourite.
Yeah, I reckon so, yeah.
So one of the things we were worried about, and obviously we've had a concern about for a few years, is osmosis, and one of the things we were really interested in seeing was whether we had any blisters, wasn't it?
That's right. So when we last hauled out a couple of years ago, if you remember, we just ground out a few blisters that we had discovered. This is after doing some extensive osmosis treatment in the refit 3 years ago. Happy to report I found one tiny blister, and it was on the rudder, which is relatively normal. The rudder is normally the wettest part of your boat. It's the bit that will get most impregnated with water. Generally, when you get osmosis, if it will start anywhere in particular, it's more than likely going to be a rudder. So one tiny little blister, and that was it.
It was such a relief. It was really, really great, and we got the surveyor to look at it as well, and we'll show you how he checked it. He checked all that too.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth just talking a little bit more about that fishing net.
Yes. Now, as you saw, that net, normally these nets are kind of secured by weights to the seabed, as I understand it, and that one was drifting with the tide, and as we said on that spring tide, was pretty strong. I think you had said that you'd seen someone drop a net further up the coast. Don't know if that was him or not, but
I think it was. I mean, you see them all the time. There's an awful lot of fishing vessels of various sizes and shapes and methods all the time everywhere in Southeast Asia, and I just was up in the cockpit, glanced up and saw the usual longtail come along, not longtail, or the equivalent of the Malaysian longtail, come along, drop a net, fine, miles away, and then the next minute they're banging on the hull. And there was this thing wrapped round Esper, and in 12 years of sailing that's never ever happened.
No, it's not. It's a controversial subject as well. I know some cruisers get upset about the seemingly erratic behaviour of fishermen. I tend to side on the fisherman's side. It's their waters, we are the guests, and if they want to drop their net in front of your anchored boat, then they pretty much have every right to. Whether you agree or disagree that that is good seamanship or not is another thing altogether. But yeah, as you say, never normally had problems with fishermen at all. No. So I, to be honest, I just don't think he was thinking.
No, or maybe it was supposed to have been secured and it came loose,
quite
because
possibly.
It just came really fast around the boat. But we were able to get rid of it. But I hope that doesn't happen again, and definitely not at night.
No. Okay, so as Liz said, we are now on the hard getting ready for that survey, which we'll cover in the next episode, but we're not, as you can see, we're at anchor. And this is our thing about trying to catch up very quickly with the vlogs. We're catching up to real time. So right now, in real time, as of this moment, we're taking part in Pirate Jam. Now, if you watched our videos last year, you'll know that we hooked up with our friend and Patreon, American McGee, who came up with this concept of Pirate Jam, which is basically an idea of getting together lots of games developers, computer games developers, sticking them on boats, taking them for a little sail, and then finding locations like the one you see behind us where they go ashore with their laptops, and in a week they have to come up with a game, a playable game.
We've got a lot of them this year. There's us and a few other boats and 20 odd pirates, and it's all good fun, actually.
It is good fun. It's really good fun, and there's people from all over the world.
Yeah.
We have people from South Africa, from Spain, from England, from Australia, and we even have 5 Chinese people as well who are taking part, 3 of whom have not only never been sailing before, but hadn't even left China. They didn't even have passports. So these are the kind of people that we are entertaining and keeping amused. If you want to find out more about Pirate Jam, we won't be covering so much of it this year as we did last year, but head over to American McGee's YouTube channel. We'll put a link in the description, and take a look and see what's happening. It's great fun.
So in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment. We read them all. We'd love to hear from you.
Yep, and if you'd love to support us, then head on over to followtheboat.com/thanks, And we thank you very much for watching. So, peace and fair winds.